So that's why I chose to do a reaction to it. Let me see if my mic working. That's why I chose to do a reaction to it because um, it's going viral right now, and I'm gonna do a reaction to anything that's going viral. So if it's gonna go viral, it's gonna be on here. Uh, so yeah, man. Y'all just check this reaction video out, and press that subscribe button, press the notification bell, and press that the like button. If you don't like it, press the uh the dislike button. I don't care. I don't care what you press, as long as there's engagement going to this video. But yeah, man. I'm trying to bring good content. I'm trying to every day, you know, trying to learn how to speak into the phone. You feel me? Like you could do this too. Like you ain't gotta have a phone. I mean, you do gotta have a phone, but you ain't gotta have a camera. No fancy equipment, no nothing. I ain't got no fancy equipment. You see, I got a mic with no stand, no stand on it, but it's still working. So, uh, yeah. Then I got my cell phone over here, the Galaxy S24. I ain't got no iPhone. I ain't, none of that. But the phone, the S24 work just as good as the iPhone. So I ain't got no problem with the S24. Everybody always talking about the iPhone. iPhone is an iPhone that, no, man. I'm telling you that Galaxy is outbeating the iPhone. So if I was you, I'm gonna encourage you right now to go get one because it's outbeating the iPhone. Trust me. Um, the camera is good and all that. Like the iPhone, the speaker is good. iPhone got good speaker, but Galaxy need to come up on a speaker. Because iPhone is killing them. But this is called Sonic Frontier though. Like it's a new game that just came out. Um, experience Sonic like never before. And I guess the graphics is supposed to be up to par. Like the graphics is supposed to be, yeah, that. You know, I like the old Sonic game though. I'm a OG at this. You know, so I like the older Sonic game. You know, I don't too much like these new Sonic games. I feel like these new Sonic games are bull crap. You feel me? What is that damn that company that made it Square something? They need a I feel like Sonic need a different company, you know. But let's get into the video though. Let's let's watch this video. It's about an hour and 9 minutes. So I suggest y'all get y'all popcorn, uh get your popcorn, get your bun buns, get whatever you eating, and then get your soda pops, get your juice, get your cranberry juice, whatever the hell you drink, your beer, whatever the hell you drink, and cause we about to go on the ride right now. You feel me? An hour. We about to do an hour reaction. It's gonna be an hour, bro. So it's a reaction video. This is my opinion uh, on the video or whatever is playing or gaming or whatever. You feel me? It's my reaction. This ain't me talking bad on the video. This ain't me owning the copyright of the video because I don't own no rights to the video, none of that. So, you know, get your coffee. Like I said, whatever you drink, get whatever you eat, and we about to go on a ride. Let's start the video. Here we go.
Experience Sonic like never before. Well, they weren't lying. Sonic Frontiers has finally been released. And therefore, so have we. It still doesn't seem real yet. We were in a post-Forces drought for so long. The food tasted different. Even after it was teased, it felt like eons before we saw any gameplay, and when we did, we were even more scared. The Sonic fandom went into an organized panic. Screams and tears were abundant. It was almost routine by that point. Colors Ultimate wasn't exactly handled with care, and even Origins, the money-printing classic collection, didn't come rent-free, so we had every right to be a little worried. Now, I kept my wits about me. I wasn't going to make a judgment call for an entire game based on one 7-minute clip without any context, but like everyone else, I had my concerns. The amount of times I saw the phrase cautiously optimistic would outnumber US citizens. Sonic Team had a lot of trust they needed to win back, and with every new piece of Frontiers-related media that came out, that started to happen. Seeing footage in 60 FPS, competent players behind the wheel, Sakurai giving us his blessing, as well as many other online testimonies that it was surprisingly fun. That incredible Knuckles prologue animation that just got everything right. A Queen song in the launch trailer, who do I have to thank for that? This all gave me confidence that the game would at least be decent, and turns out I couldn't have been more on the money. Seeing the words overwhelmingly positive next to a new Sonic game is touching. Experience Sonic like never before? Yeah, I'm looking at it. Still though, I wasn't sure how fun it was going to be until I played it for myself. Some games you could just kind of...
All right, I see. Like, well, with it. All right, I see that they upgraded some stuff. All right. The game look kind of promising. You feel me? I ain't played it, so I don't know, and I ain't seen this video, so you know. But it looked kind of promising. Look okay. Let's check it out some more. They know that they can contact me if they need anything. I call them my babies. But financially, we're suffering. I could never have imagined it'd be so hard to get donations. And I've already spent too much own money that I need for Destiny's college and for Diamond's medicine. Diamond, is she okay? She's fine. It's just her.
Kind of tell if you're gonna like it. This was not the case. I needed that hands-on approach, and now that I've got it, there's a lot to say. So if you want to go in blind, this is your spoiler warning. What is happening with your foot? One thing a lot of people were excited for was Ian Flynn hopping aboard for the story. I think he mainly helped rewrite the English script, but I can easily say that this is the best Sonic story and characterization since Black Knight. After a decade of
Baldy knows.
we have a narrative that allows itself to be lost in mystery for a while. Exposition is slowly trickled in over time. Well, until they sandblast you at the end. Everything is more dialed back, especially in the voice direction. This is the lowest Roger has ever sounded. And I think I love it. He debatably sounds less like the character now, but the line reads are so much better. It's like night and day, even compared to the previous game.
It's been generations since I've seen you.
Yeah, it's been generations since I've laughed. You can tell a Sonic fan was behind the scenes for this because everyone acts like who they are. Sonic tapping his finger because he's impatient, butting heads with Knuckles, having legitimate conversations with Amy. Eggman almost gets shot down by military, really taken after his grandfather. There's so much heart-to-heart sprinkled in here while still keeping the playful humor intact. Mike Pollock straight up sounds like Liam Neeson at points, and I don't know why they kept that gem away from us till now.
I understand. Go. Fill your function.
A friend gave this to me. It's Albanian. You mind translating it?
There are also a lot of references to past games, which I know might sound like, but the way it's done here is more like a long overdue paying of respects, acknowledging the history of a long-running franchise after a decade of pretending like Green Hill Zone was the only thing Sonic ever did. Maybe they go a little overboard with it, but for a first time, I'll take it. Now, it's not perfect. It's actually a rather basic plot and kind of rushed by the end. What's with all these goofy-looking smiles? But the improvements made to the dialogue do so much heavy lifting, it's astounding. A big step in the right direction. The presentation, on the other hand, is a different story.
Well, then let's do it to it. We're out of time.
While some scenes are quite expressive, a lot are two characters standing around, hardly moving while commenting on whatever just happened. It lacks a needed degree of personality and motion. Even when things are moving, it's often robotic or an idle sway. Look at that rotisserie chicken spin she just did. It really seems unfinished in these areas. But then sometimes it's good again, so it kind of evens out. Oh, look at that. They love each other. No CGI cutscenes either. How the mighty have fallen. Even Lost World had an opening. I think it would have gave a much more striking first impression. Again, the dialogue carries it all, but I'm really hoping they can get some more bombastic animation next time. Sonic is dead. In any event, this is the first full-price Sonic game in a while, and like Origins, there is a deluxe edition. And it's a little better. You get a cool digital art book that for some reason doesn't play in full screen. It has some nice concept art of the environments, although it's not very long. If this was a physical booklet, that would have been awesome. Kind of like the steelbook you got from pre-ordering a physical copy. Yeah, that was kind of a bummer, wasn't it? If you bought the game on Steam, you couldn't get the book since there is no physical version for that. It is pretty cool though, very sleek, reflective design. I just wish there was a bit more to it. Mania got a reversible cover and pre-ordering got you that statue. They went all out for that game. You also get a mini soundtrack. It's 25 songs, including everything from Island 1, plus the full version of I'm Here, and that's cool. But the full soundtrack was already scheduled to come out 1 month after the game's release date, so just get that instead if you're a music diehard. You also get a few starting items to help you out with progression. Yeah, not a fan of this. Don't give me a paid advantage in an already full-priced game especially. And why am I being given free collectible items in a game about collecting items? Isn't that the whole point? Actually paying for less content. My eyes were primarily set on the adventurer's gloves and shoes, and I really thought that was a placeholder image. Ironically, the one thing people would have paid out the wazoo for is totally free, the soap shoes. My guess is Sega was like, yo, you gotta milk this rodent with another deluxe edition, and Sonic Team was like, fine, we'll slap something together, but then release the actual good stuff for free. So we load up the game, and I don't know what happened the first time, but it took like 5 minutes for the application to open. Better believe my heart sank right away when I saw that. I get to the main menu, it's got a nice cloudy sky with the sun peeking through. Kind of stagnant though, especially when the music cuts out and that all too familiar corporate silence comes back.
I love you.
No. Ooh, we got a user manual?
Too.
Welcome to the modern age. There's a weird amount of input delay on these menus too. You have to wait for the options to show up in about 2 extra seconds before your control comes back. It's weird. But hey, at least we got multiple save files again. Finally, I don't have to clear all my data to start fresh. Forces didn't have that, or Lost World, or Generations, or Unleashed, or 06. Little tip about these files though, the game is always auto-saving into the very first file labeled auto. I made the mistake of assuming that if I went to start a new game, it would auto-save into the next one. Not so. It always uses the auto file across every play session. So if you've completed the game, then start a new one and it auto-saves. that becomes your new file and you lose everything. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. You're supposed to manually save onto the actual slot 1 if you want to keep it independent. In hindsight, I understand what I did wrong, but why not just let us pick the file that it autosaves to like a normal game? When it comes to art direction, not everybody seems to be on the same page.
I'm like a little sister.
But this is Sonic, so what else is new? From the onset, the plan was to juxtapose the standard character designs against photorealistic environments. And this is something I have always loved. From 06 to Unleashed to Black Knight, I think Sonic in a...
Yeah, I do like the environment now. The environment is
And when this one
it's crazy, bro. Like looking at it,
you'll have more time to work on the next one.
yeah, the environment is real crazy.
I don't only want it to be my success.
They did they
What do you mean?
they did their show on
I wanna help other
environment,
writers.
bro.
Help them out.
I could say that.
Get them in print. I can start a
But the
publishing
storyline,
company for women like me.
like he said,
I gotta say,
it's bull crap.
when you dream, you certainly dream big. And I was dreaming if I thought my battle with cancer could be fought alone. Turns out I needed my family now.
real-looking world is cool. In fact, he's what makes it work. If we were running around as some regular guy, these settings would be immediately less interesting. But having that red, white, and blue charisma in every frame of gameplay rounds off the color balance and frankly, makes it feel more fantasy-like. You think this is funny? Could some areas be improved? Of course. More distinct landmarks to help with map recognition, maybe some dynamic set pieces like a sandstorm on Ares or a lightning storm on Kronos, and definitely some greater biome variety. It starts strong with the grassy ruins, desert, and snowy volcanic mountainside, but then we go right back to grassy forest and ruins again. Did I just go between that enemy's legs? If you want to go that full circle route where the journey starts and ends in the same area, that's fine, but only having 3 major biomes for the AAA open zone debut? Kind of sparse. Gives the impression that they needed to pad out the runtime instead of having enough content to make a full game. Thankfully, we have some pretty nice architecture and visual change-ups to make up for it.
Cool giant mirror web thing.
Yeah, cool walk without moving legs thing. The day and night cycle is probably my favorite touch. Always nice to see a Scrapto 6 idea come back to life. It gives each island a multitude of different lighting and color palettes to cycle through, leading to some honestly breathtaking scenery. This affects cutscenes too, since they're rendered in-game. You can experience the same story at multiple times of day. Even the big bosses that you think would break continuity don't, which makes everyone's playthrough that much more personalized. There were many points where I'd catch a view and just enjoy it for a moment, take in the atmosphere and feel the mood. As for the rails in the sky concern, I'm gonna have to echo what many others have said. Yes, if you stop and look around, it can appear slapdash and random with all this floating geometry, but when you see that stuff far in the distance, your initial thoughts are, how do I get there? What's over there? Is it worth it? Those are the questions that cross your mind, not, oh, does this object orientation complement the artistic imagery? It's like, put the fedora down, we're playing Sonic Frontiers. Of course, presentation matters and it should be improved, but it becomes a much smaller distraction when you're the one playing the game. And when the rails are connected to a giant floating structure, it looks right at home. Besides, you're too focused on the pop-in anyway. Yeah, this one's a little harder to defend. I will say, it didn't disrupt my performance. I never felt like things were popping in and out of frame, messing me up like I've seen in some clips. But when the first cinematic tracking shot is loading the island in real time, I'm not filled with a sense of wonder and awe. It just makes me shudder thinking about how Sega wanted this game out last year. Clearly, the engine is not fully optimized, and I hate to see that because it feels like Sonic is rarely given that same polish that you know the people who made, say, Mario would.
Your dog comes away.
Hey, wait a sec. Even Cyberspace has pop-in on rare occasion. Some stuttering too, but I'm gonna chalk that up to de novo again because yeah, it's back. Although it doesn't seem to be giving anyone nearly as hard of a time as with Origins, which is just hilarious. The cyber levels look great though. Yes, Screen Hill again, but it does look pretty good at sunset. I like how the backgrounds are all broken apart with a scanline filter. Chemical Plant may just be the best it's ever looked in 3D. I was never huge on the dark skybox in Generations, and Forces took out all the blue. Sky Sanctuary is as good as ever. It helps that they haven't spammed this motif yet. And the city is fully original as far as I can tell. There were only 2 instances where I couldn't see properly. I got hit by these same spikes in 3-2 over and over. Dude, stop. It gets disguised among those tiny plants at high speeds, and something about the curve of the hill throws me off. And then when you're falling here in 3-6, if you hold right, like you may be inclined from the hours of muscle memory, you'll slip right through the gap. Why does that sound like the most real and fake scream at the same time? So yeah, some visibility issues, but overall, easy on the eyes. I think Frontiers looks great. And outside of what I showed, the performance is actually rock solid. No frame drops or slowdown. It ran just fine on PC. When starting a new game, you'll watch a couple cutscenes, play a cyber stage, wonder why does it control like this, and then wake up in the tutorial section of Kronos Island. It was quite unanimous from everyone who played the demo that this part was tedious to get through, and yes, it is everything wrong with video game tutorials, constantly stopping you to read some function you could have figured out on your own. Like when it halts you in place, pans to 3 switches, and then tells you, activate the switches. There are 3 ancient switches on the ground. Yeah, I had a feeling. Mind you, Frontiers is not alone in doing this. Hundreds of games are guilty. And look, I get it. There's a lot to learn. This is usually done out of fear that players will be confused and not know what to do, or the inability to teach us in far more creative ways. Yeah. Okay. What perplexes me, though, is that they have a great workaround already in place with optional notifications that appear in the top right corner. This way, if I've already figured out what to do, I don't have to read it. But if I'm stuck, I can. I can even disable those notifications if I want to, but these? Gotta read them every time. Sure wish one of them told me how to save. It's not the worst. I'm sure you'll appreciate the info if you've never played a video game. You might think I'm overreacting. It's just that it's 2022 and we're still doing this, so I'm just kind of over it. It turns this whole opening into an ordeal I wish I could skip on repeat playthroughs. I found the first 30 to 40 minutes of Frontiers to be lacking in impact. What the heck is going on here? Too many pop-ups, you're under-leveled, no cool combos yet, puzzles are basic. I don't see this roping anyone in without reservation, which is why it's so important to acknowledge that it gets way better almost immediately after. Like many Sonic games, you have to take some time to learn what makes it fun, because not everything in it will be, not when you do it like this. If holding forward is boring, then look for shortcuts. If button mashing is repetitive, level up and use different moves to keep it fresh. Find ways to innovate. Freedom is the motif here. Alright, not too much freedom. Frontiers is broken up into 5 main islands, with 4 of them being large open zone areas. Essentially, giant hub worlds. It's not a full-on open world game because the islands don't connect, but they operate under similar rules individually. The main objective is to beat the big Titan boss at the end of each island, from Shin Godzilla to Monsoon. But you need all 7 Chaos Emeralds, because without them, Sonic will perish. They're all currently sealed in separate vaults, with the final one being located on the Titan itself. How do you open these? You need vault keys. How do you get those? By completing missions in cyberspace. How do you get there? By using portal gears that you get from beating large bosses, otherwise known as guardians, who can be made easier by completing various tasks to level up. However, some emeralds are only obtainable through story-related cutscenes. Scattered around the islands are memory tokens for the respectively trapped character. Once you have enough, you head over to where they are and you can talk to them. Most of these are optional, but sometimes they'll take you into a mandatory minigame that gives you the emerald. This is where that Sonic dance animation plays. Knuckles is in shock. So as you can see, there is a lot of incentive to participate in most gameplay avenues, but how much participation is somewhat up to you. If you only need 1 portal gear and there are 5 bosses, you have a choice in which one you tackle. Sometimes you can find these crucial items randomly in the world to help tip the scales in your favor. It's a reasonably flexible gameplay loop. Is it fun, though? Let's talk about traversal, how it feels to move Sonic around a big open landscape. Alright then, when it comes to precision, I think this is the best he's ever controlled, second only to the adventure games. That stiff, heavy weight that always came with the boost formula is gone. You go where you want, when you want. It's shocking, really. Maybe a little loose and floaty in places, but this is the first game in like 20 years where I didn't have to get used to the controls. Yes, I did it. Now, this does have its drawbacks. To allow for such accuracy, momentum has been cut entirely. There is no rolling around, gradually building speed and launching off ramps. Gravity and terrain have no influence over your acceleration. You can stop and start on a dime, and that was a big red flag for a lot of people. Sonic's very inception is built on physics, and so it can't help but feel flat when all you're doing is holding a button to move at the same set speed, devoid of all those satisfying tricks we know and love in a sprawling map of hills and valleys. Help. What bothers me more than anything, though, is that jumping kills all your speed. The main redeeming quality I would always give Forces credit for was that boost jumping was pretty fun. You could get a lot of distance out of it and still have an air boost and double jump to cut some corners. A genuinely fun tactic that made or broke a lot of stages. Wait, Sonic, what are you doing? No! No! Frontiers doesn't have that because your jump resets you to default speed and isn't nearly as high for some reason. Air boosting is still a legitimate means of taking shortcuts to the grave, but I'm constantly discouraged from jumping because I know it's gonna slow me down. Great for precision, buzzkill for speed. The default boost isn't even that fast. You need to max out your ring count to gain the power boost, which in my opinion, must be enabled at all times. There are also a lot of control settings you can mess with in the options, as if to say, fine, you guys do it, but I left it as default and it felt just fine. It seems that the action and high speed modes you choose in the beginning are nothing more than presets. Action zooming the camera further out and a lower max speed, but you can change these at any time, and I recommend doing just that. This is criminal. All that being said, there is one game-changing momentum trick that luckily made it in. Rail launching. A regular jump may kill your speed, but hopping off a rail maintains it, and just like that, the game opens up tenfold. Shortcuts galore, fast travel fiesta, an objective normally preceded by a long platforming challenge can be reached with a well-thought-out rail jump. This is why people are so adamant about physics-based momentum being present for Sonic, because it has historically always made the games more fun. Yeah, I could play like this. Or it adds a skill ceiling, creates opportunities for innovation, and Frontiers is further indicative of that. Additionally, boosting off of a flat surface will maintain your velocity, albeit in a rigid straight line, but this is another trick that can be used to get around in perhaps some unintentional ways. And discovering a new spot to zip across a huge chasm is divine. You'd be surprised how much mileage you can get out of this. Don't want to fight a mini-boss to make that spring appear that gets you on the big diamond? Find the right elevation and you can cut right to the chase. It's so satisfying. The collision is kind of janky though, so you'll often trigger this by accident on solid ground. It can be a pleasant surprise, but visually inconsistent to try and manipulate. Sometimes he trips over a pebble and breakdances for 2 seconds, and then other times he hugs the ground with so much commitment that he speedruns his own life. There's a lot of jittering over objects, slow walking on an incline pushes you back. Yeah, I've got some questions. But overall, the movement is solid, elevated by some elaborate airborne maneuvers. So, we've established that running around these maps feels pretty good, but what is there to do in them? Each island is made up of a series of platforming segments that range from hitting a spring into a hoop that grants a memory token, to an extended rail-grinding homing attack sequence that spins you around to the top of a giant floating diamond with a bunch of collectibles. These are everywhere, and by design, never outstay their welcome. They're snappy in nature, always fast, and grant you something for your time. If you really know your way around, you can often chain these encounters together to keep the pace moving for max efficiency. Sometimes one path will intentionally send you towards another to encourage that flow state. Even if it sends you further away from your current objective, please stop. However, there is definitely a repetition to these tasks. It's a lot of rail grinding, homing attack chains, and going through hoops that send you onto more rails to repeat. It's very automated when you isolate the input required, rarely amounting to anything more than a single button press at the right time. So I can see not everyone being on board for the entirety of this game's duration. Heck, even I started skipping these. That was for a different reason. I knew there was a problem when I would accidentally redo a section that I already beat and felt like I was wasting my time. I realized that I wasn't always in it for the thrill, I just wanted that trinket at the end because there really wasn't much of a thrill. I think the wall running feature holds a lot of untapped potential for these parts. Well, when the collision doesn't call in sick, you can grab on and start running at a casual jog, or boost onto it for a much higher speed that's harder to control. Quite the potent consideration to make, since falling off would be a concern. That is, if 90% of the wall running wasn't preceded by a dash pad that sent you into springs, doing all the work for you. I actually felt unprepared when the game suddenly had me doing things on my own because of how babied I was. Look at this, I'm like a child learning to walk. What have you done to me? This could have been the perfect innovation on Lost World's parkour, bouncing around big open terrain, but instead it's a feature that I rarely got to use on my own terms. And even then it didn't always work. I understand that some degree of automation is required at this point if you want all those fancy camera angles and faster than the eye can react moments. Hey, that sucks. So include shortcuts that only the keen speed-running eye can locate. It sometimes does that, but still only involves a quick homing attack. Add more timing elements, like with the enemy that spawns a bunch of homing chains, but you can't hit the red one, so you gotta aim towards the green. For those moments high in the sky, make a mini level out of it. Use bigger pieces of land to construct some level design. Platforming without a safety net, and would someone please get this man a sweater? The way the world is structured currently feels like a skeleton. Solid, but needs meat on it. Kronos Island is pretty good for the most part, housing some memorable set-piece towers. Ares is about the same, only it takes you underground at one point, something I think we could have used more of. It's Chaos Island where we start to see some problems, though. There is an explosion of 2D sections, just an Armageddon of disappointment. Now, the first two islands had some of these, but they were a fraction of the content. In fact, I found their small inclusion to be refreshing in a way. Heresy, I know. It felt organic, occasionally transitioning to 2D for a quick platforming challenge that you could only get in the second dimension before promptly returning to the open zone.
You're a mom. You need this.
Chaos Island makes me want to purchase a firearm. 9 times out of 10, if you take a dash pad or a spring, it will send you into Color's Purgatory. And after a while, it is simply too much. Being locked in this perspective takes away all of the game's biggest strengths. No rail launching, not that you could see far enough ahead to plan one. No branching off to an adjacent set piece using your clever wit, and no sense of depth. At least in 3D, there were moments where you were flung high in the sky and could see just how far down you could fall, sometimes over a death pit. Maybe a homing attack was still all you needed to make it across, but the sensation at least had some tension. Here, you don't even know where you are in relation to the rest of the island. You are bound by the straight line, unable to break the rules.
And it's really not.
What is this? Why can't I make it? Do I have to go back or... Oh, okay. I developed a phobia of springs and dash panels halfway through this island because I knew where it meant I was going. It was especially irritating to get pushed into a section that I already completed, more so when there was no way to back out. But because so much of it looks the same, it can be hard to remember what you have and haven't done yet after running around for an hour. It's better to skip it entirely and not take the risk. These treasure signs really got on my nerves for that reason. On the first two islands, they would usually give you some kind of item. But here, it seemed like it would always reveal a spring or dash pad that torpedoed me into a section I may or may not have already completed. Sometimes the side-scrolling perspective is so pointless too. Like it's just a spring and an enemy with a ramp at the end. Why is this in 2D? Again, if there wasn't so much of it, I wouldn't care. I may have even liked it. But this drained me. Also, why can't we go in the volcano? Otani had the 9-string in his studio and you let him do nothing for a lava stage? I'm placing you under arrest. Like I said before, I think it was a missed opportunity to not have more environmental events like storms and whatnot. There's already a starfall that happens every few nights where meteors fall like rain and give items, so why not a meteor shower from the active volcano to spice things up? That would have been sweet. Maybe we could explore this hexagonal underside. I want to go here, man. All right, that's it. I'm stomping this bird. Rhea Island is where the false marketing becomes revealed. The game advertises 5 islands, and while that is technically true, this one is entirely story-related in that you don't explore the open zone at all, but instead climb to the top of 6 towers to shut them down. Now, it's basically confirmed that Kronos Island was split into 3 parts, Rhea being one of them, hence the similar green aesthetic. And it is very disappointing that this couldn't be its own dense area like the others. But for what it's worth, I thought the scenery was kind of epic. Sonic grinding up these massive towers while an orchestra blares away, one wrong move sending you all the way down. All things considered, I think some of the best 2D segments in Frontiers are here. The balance between side-scrolling and full 3D movement is much better than Chaos Island. There are some legitimate do-or-die moments where you get flung into the air and have to manually land on a rail without a homing attack to save you. That's the kind of stuff I want to see. Let us play the game. We paid money for it. The only thing about Rhea Island that really bothers me is how it handles Sonic's cyber corruption. All throughout the story, we see him slowly becoming possessed by cyberspace, with every idle stance becoming more haggard, eventually taking on a form that I swear was going to canonize Dark Sonic. You can't do this to me. But then Tails, Knuckles, and Amy are like, we gotta save him.
Is that
We saved him.
straight?
What? Why? Oh, right, because the game has to ship out soon. Not only was all tension absolved in an anticlimactic instant, it was the perfect opportunity to let us play as each character in an '06 end-of-the-world style cyber stage. Imagine Speed Highway for Tails, Pumpkin Hill for Knuckles, or Hot Shelter for Amy. I don't even care about playing as the other characters and I'm freaking out. I need a nap. The fifth and final island, Uranos, is graciously a full expedition again, but is still just a leftover second half of Chronos, causing the visual theming to greatly homogenize. And in a game that already has a repetition problem, it's not doing itself any favors. Forces recycled stuff, but it still had a wicked-looking endgame. It's not completely devoid of original ideas, but for the big finale, it doesn't leave a very strong impact. Did that guy just fall? We're just getting started, though, because movement is only 1/3 of what you do in the open zone. Puzzles and minigames are another major component. They give you upgrade items upon completion, create rails for faster travel, and fill in parts of the map, an essential in locating other objectives. As for the missions themselves, surprisingly, I liked most of them, mainly because similar to the platforming, all of these encounters are so short they couldn't possibly get annoying. Well, now that doesn't automatically make them good either. There are some doozies in here. The parrying bullets one? The worst, by far. There is no parrying in this game. It's a guard that you hold indefinitely and guarantees results. There's no skill ceiling. You just hold L and R and wait. No penalty, no drawbacks. You will win. A fundamental misunderstanding of what makes parrying such a fun move to master. And they make you do it multiple times where the bullets get faster. A change that would matter if I actually had to time it, but I never do. So I'm essentially doing the same exact task 3 times in a row because they've removed any reason to play differently. The quick stepping one is a little less egregious since you don't know which direction the panel will be, but still just Simon Says. Why not make us dodge stuff? And if we get hit 3 times, try again. Kind of like how some of the other minigames operate. Same with hitting switches. It's like, okay, this was fine in the tutorial. Why is this on the second island? It's better when they combine it with other gimmicks like the floating pillars you have to homing attack. At least I'm going somewhere. Jump rope was cool for a second, but it doesn't throw any curveballs your way. The crane game, I don't know who thought this was fun. And the hamster wheel, I'm convinced was a freebie to give you an item because all you do is run in place. Then you got those weird ones like the floating spirit ball that you have to stay next to long enough so it evaporates. Yeah, I can really see that one getting tossed around the board meeting. It's not even a bad mission, honestly. It's just like, where did this come from? Or when you have to side-loop these smelly trees at night because... Yeah, that's another strange variant. There are 2 missions that can only be performed at night. The other being these light pillars that you individually side-loop and then listen for where the next one spawns. And if you take too long, you'll have to start over. Most missions have a time limit, but they're never a concern. It's a wonder why they're even here. Especially for ones like the panel puzzle where you're given minutes to solve it, but can just walk off the edge to reset the timer. I understand dumbing down the difficulty to capture that casual audience, but if you're gonna put a hard mode in, do it. Don't make it this half-hearted, slightly altered easy mode and then still randomly spring one of the hardest puzzles ever made on us. Like, what is this Sacred Grove statue madness and why is it only on the first island? Nothing else in the game, no, the franchise comes close to the complexity here. You thought the Eggman puzzle gave you a hard time? You are a child. And yet, there's still a way to glitch it. If you wiggle the analog stick, the movements will go out of sync, so you can move individual pieces when you're not supposed to. The one instance where the timer kind of mattered was against a punching bag. You have a limited amount of time to deal a certain amount of damage, and while reaching that quota is easy, you can self-impose a challenge to go for a high score if you want. Those are the not-so-great missions. Everything else, I thought was pretty fun. Going through all the blue squares in the allotted time, yeah, it's Superman 64, but at least I'm moving, and it controls well. Same with the races, it's fun to run around as Sonic, so missions designed around that are always going to be a good time. This is where I really think rankings should have come in. Clearing these under the time limit isn't hard, but maybe doing it in an even shorter time is, and gives you a better item. This would at least reward you for being good. I can't believe how much I like these basketball minigames. When it's only 1 hoop, it's whatever, but later on when there's 5, I am zoned in on making my shots. And you actually have to aim, positioning matters. Tetris was an unexpected joy. You look at the orientation on the ground and try to copy it by dropping the correct order of pieces onto it. Sure, it's not the most advanced, but I didn't hate it. One of my favorites was the Bentley hacking bullet hell Ikaruga clone that comes out of complete nowhere. I had a big smile when this showed up. I hope it comes back later. Little did I know. I mentioned the panel puzzle earlier. This is actually my favorite one, and that's great because it seems to be the one we do the most. It starts super basic, but once we get to Ares, they become decent brain teasers. It's nothing overly complicated, but it takes a moment to assess and go, I get it. And reaching that conclusion is a small pleasure. I don't care if it was in Rise of Lyric. You know what, though? We did not have enough of Sonic loading a live missile into a cannon. Those are some uncharted waters. I'm going to die. This light mirror puzzle only shows up once near the end. I think more stuff like this would be pretty cool. How about that out of left field bolt collecting game where you smash boxes and outrun falling platforms over lava? This needed more screen time. The lava in general was horribly underused. The mandatory Chaos Emerald missions seem to be where the extra care was placed, because you load into a separate arena that has its own HUD and music. Herd the Cocos over to one side under a time limit, save them from smashing drill towers, or rather their hitboxes, where everything incrementally speeds up, turning basic movements into an ordeal. I hate this. Times 4 speed, I think, is objectively unclearable. What do I do? It's an interesting juggling act because the more Cocos you hold, the faster everything becomes, so you don't want to get overzealous with your carriage, as enticing as that comically large stack is. It's also a pain to control, so it's better to take it in bursts. Alright, we're here. Now, just go straight in. Bridge the Gap was the one occasion where I felt the stress of the time limit. Steer Sonic properly, don't lose time to the bounce back, and take the right routes for maximum shortcuts. Not bad. Overall, I thought the objectives were decent. Some pretty fun ones, a lot of acceptable busy work, others more disposable, and a few that I didn't care for. Oh right, pinball. Yeah, this sucks. So, the physics aren't game accurate. It's more like Casinopolis, meaning the ball has very little weight, taking much longer to come back down, slowing the entire process. Wouldn't be a huge deal if it wasn't for the absurdly high score requirement. 6 minutes is what it took me in a game where missions are often over in seconds. Throw in RNG deaths that can reset the whole run, and you have one of the most insipid minigames in all of Sonic. Not even 2 minutes into my first attempt, and I said out loud to myself, I'd rather play the ball puzzle. Now, it's really not that bad. Getting red rings increases your score multiplier, so learning how to fling the ball where you want becomes a genuine skill, and I started getting pretty good at it. But it still goes on way too long, and again, the RNG kills it. Scattered throughout each island, you'll find portals to Cyberspace, where you'll play one of 30 bite-sized traditional linear Sonic stages that run anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple minutes. So yes, Frontiers comes with a playable forces built into it. There are a few things that can't go without mentioning for these. The first is the recycled visuals. Experience Sonic like never before. Yeah, about that. Calling back to an older game should be special. Give you that authentic, warm feeling that reminds you of good times. Instead, people are tired and agitated at the mere sight of another Green Hill Zone. Chemical Plant has begun following suit, and Sky Sanctuary will too if they keep this up. I don't hate this, it doesn't ruin my day, but there's no denying that it would be so much better for everyone if we had a fully original Sonic game again. And as if in on the joke, the level designs are also ripped straight out of past games, namely Adventure 2, Unleashed, and Generations. If it looks like you're in Skyrail again, that's because you are. Hey, just like the original. Now, this is a pretty cool concept that would be even cooler if they didn't limit themselves to 4 themes. The story excuse is that Cyberspace is jumbling Sonic's memories around, so that's why everything is so familiar. But if this was really that integral to the plot and affected all of Sonic's memories, why stop at 4? Why not have every stage be a different callback? Sky's the limit when you're already stealing. Well, that would take more time and assets, i.e. money. So I'm sure that what they chose was most convenient for their budget. I sympathize with that, but what we have feels more like a compromise than an artistic vision. The other unavoidable bump in the road is how much worse the control is in these stages. I'm bewildered by this. How is it that the game that finally got Sonic's control right after 21 years still messes it up? Just keep it the same as the overworld control without all the upgrades. They actually created more work for themselves by changing it. Something must have gone wrong. The fact that I almost jumped right off the stage the moment I started says it all. That being said, I did master Forces Control, so this was just another day at the office. What is going on? And even if it did play the same as in the open zone, some issues would carry over regardless. Sonic is not fast in these levels at all. There is a devastating lack of speed. I think it's better to mash the boost button instead of holding it down. I'm losing neurons just processing that. Not that you'd intuitively pick up on that since there's so little visual feedback when you're boosting. I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't tell the difference. Losing all your momentum during a jump has never been more insulting. The flow is always being disrupted, and it makes it so that the bottom route, when there's less platforming, is sometimes the faster one. The Antichrist of Sonic ideology, I'm gonna lose it. None of your moves reset until you touch the ground either. Normally you'd regain your double jump, air boost, and stomp after a simple homing attack, but not here. I can see the argument that you have to ration these abilities more since you only have one of each in midair, but at the same time, all the other boost games had just as high of a skill ceiling with the refresh, so I don't think that's a restriction worth having. It also makes replaying the stages that did have one in the original awkward by comparison, and any contact made to an enemy has an immense delay, whether it be a homing attack, stomp, or just jumping into one. This gives it a lot of power, but shoots the pacing right out of the sky. Here's the kicker though. I still enjoyed myself thoroughly. Since we're ripping off good stages, the level design is pretty good by default. Multiple routes, slow platforming that can be skipped, shortcuts via snappy movement. When it comes to 3D, it's a vast improvement over Forces. Then again, Frontiers can't really take the credit for that, except for the last handful of stages, which I believe are original. But on the other hand, 2D sections are far inferior, since at least in that game, we had a lot of momentum to take shortcuts and keep a steady flow that we are sorely robbed of in Frontiers. Nowhere is this more clear than when grinding on rails and feeling the soul leave your body when you jump. Cover your eyes, children. Thankfully, there is much more 3D than 2D this time, and at its best, I thought it was pretty fun. More colors and less generations, if you catch my drift. A feature we still don't have, turning 3-5 into a train wreck of mundane swerving. I want to leave. Since colliding with enemies causes that unwanted delay, I found that Cyberspace presented a unique scenario where it became more beneficial to boost jump over and around my foes instead of using the homing attack, especially since we can't boost through them anymore. In a weird roundabout way, this minimized a lot of the automation and had me traversing terrain in ways I probably wouldn't have considered if that delay wasn't there. Dodging enemies, boost jumping, and air boosting really is the name of the game, and wonky controls or not, learning to shave seconds off your time is always a good feeling. Also, the Lightspeed Dash is back. Huzzah! Never mind. Every Cyberspace stage has the same 4 objectives, and you earn a vault key for each. Beat the stage, get an S rank, finish with a certain number of rings, and find all red star rings. Unfortunately, the casual curse has infected these parameters as well, since S ranking will come naturally for most. Here's the deal. A ranking system is the perfect answer to appeasing both crowds. You can make the game easy to beat, but throw in an optional challenge for the ones who need it. Once again, we're given a trophy for not playing like a total idiot instead of a champion who mastered the content to some degree. Hey, welcome back, Iron Fortress. 1-2 is the only one that has a tough S rank, and you know that had to be an accident. Same with the red rings. 90% of these are on the main path, sometimes back to back on a stretch of automation where they're impossible to miss. I thought these were collectibles, not participation awards. It's so bizarre. There's a laundry list of problems with Cyberspace, and yet I still enjoy running through most of them on some level. If the speed was higher, jumping didn't kill it, and the control matched the open zone, I think these would be fairly exciting to play for everyone. Of course, if you really don't like them, it is possible to skip most, if not all of Cyberspace entirely. Tucked away on every map is a fishing hole where none other than Big the Cat takes you under his wing into lo-fi heaven, and so now, the game is officially a 10.
Oh, hey, Sonic.
Hey, Big, you sound a little slow. Are you alright? Seriously, you could have a tumor. All throughout the islands are purple fishing coins that you pay to cast your line like an arcade machine. It's a very simple minigame. Wait for a bite, hit the ripple inside the ring, and claim whatever you happen to reel back. Holy smokes. Sometimes it gets faster, the rings are smaller, and there might be more than one, usually on a golden bite, but it's the same gist. You're not going to mess these up. It's basically a quick time event with RNG loot, so there was a point where I got bored pretty fast. Yet, I found myself back for more on every island. Part of the fun is seeing what crazy new creature you're gonna hook next. It'll ease you in with the small fry, but eventually it's gonna say, yo, Barracuda. It doesn't take long to fish out the whole pond, so repeat playthroughs aren't as exciting, but that first time, you have no idea what it's gonna unveil. Carp, stingray, squid, and anglerfish? How is that even possible? Look at Big's face, he's mortified. All right, I'm drawing the line at alligator. What kind of rod are we using? I think this might be the best game ever made. Sometimes you don't even get a fish. It's just random items buried below. Yo, the 10 Commandments. Or it's a reference like the chopper. See, this is clever nostalgia. Alright, don't push it now. I just wish you could skip through all the fanfare because there's a lot of waiting between catches. Everything you collect goes into the Fishopedia, and every island adds new critters to the existing pool, so there's definitely a good reason to go to each one. They're also worth much more the further into the game you get. See, everything you reel in is given to Big in exchange for fish tokens. These are used to buy whatever in-game collectibles you want. They're all here. Don't feel like fighting bosses for portal gears or doing cyberspace for vault keys? Just fish for like 20 minutes and you can skip half the island. The value of what you catch goes up so much on later ponds too. So does the cost of admission, but does that really look like it's gonna phase me? Then we have that Starfall event I mentioned earlier. You grab the rainbow bits on the ground to use as a credit for the on-screen slot machine, and you will rack up a ton of coins this way. Frankly, too many for something entirely left up to chance. You can already sidestep so much content using Big, it's crazy that they would enable it so vehemently. What they don't tell you is that there's a limited amount of credits you can spend before the machine disappears, and that usually ended up being around 10 for me. So here I am trying to grab as many bits as possible thinking it matters when in reality, it caps much earlier. I'm not sure if there are some hidden rules to this I'm unaware of. I had to look in the options after my first playthrough to find out you can manually stop the machine. And the machine remains on screen the whole time, blocking your view. I really wish I could minimize it. Also, why a slot machine? Is there significance? Why not just give me a time limit to collect as many bits as I can that turn into coins after? Then I'd at least have some agency and incentive to not stop at 10. Or you can just grind the barbecue spit from the Monster Hunter DLC. It doesn't cost any coins, and you get fish tokens for it, because that's balanced. The other currency you can get are gold cards from treasure chests, which allow you to buy one of anything in the shop, regardless of token price. Something I recommend you do because they provide a lot of additional story context, references, and funny moments.
Take control of all its resources and give them to me.
What the heck was that? I wish there was more of a surprise factor to getting chests, though. Brown always has one card and gold has 3. No sense in locking it inside a chest if I already know what it's gonna be before it opens. Some more varied, rare encounters would have been nice to add a bit of suspense. A larger inventory of shop items, too. The memos were a good start, but they could have dropped some cosmetics in here. Instead of going the DLC route, give us a way to unlock something cool in-game as an achievement. I'm always down for that. Lastly, we have the scrolls, allowing you to fast travel to any Elder and Hermit Cocoa visible on your map. Worth noting that you can't buy these in the shop, you gotta fish for them. However, clearing all mission objectives will give you fast travel to any portal on the map, including a fishing spot, so you have a backup. The final piece of Frontier's gameplay loop is combat. You start out with a basic homing attack, couple punches, and a stomp, but as you defeat common enemies, you gain skill points to unlock moves on your skill tree. The first is the Psy Loop, the main attraction if you will. Draw a circle on the ground and everything within will be damaged. It's also used in many puzzles and groundskeeping. Mid-combat though, I rarely used it. I found the process to be too slow and the camera left me feeling vulnerable. Yeah, in general, the camera was only ever an issue in battle, and while some of that is up to player finesse, there were moments where it became a war crime. Oh my god. Guardians always put the focus on them for a title card intro, but sometimes you're just trying to run past and look, it's not all about you. Makes it really funny when it doesn't work though. Like if a different enemy steals your attention at the same time, it all gets jacked up. Ah, yeah. Him. This was partially what contributed to the early game's weak start for me. Without any combos unlocked, it was very button-mashy. The simplistic, unthreatening enemy AI didn't do much to enhance the fights, especially when you have an out-of-pocket parry that can dispatch any danger at all times. And the camera made Asura, the first big boss, awkward to get used to. Not to mention the janky collision on running up the arms, the fact you can mess this up is wild. Next to no invincibility frames either, so you can get comboed while you're down. No. A fight can go from painfully dull to wait, I died in an instant. When I finally did unlock some stuff, Kronos Island really didn't give me much to try it on. The sonic boom annihilates everything from a safe distance with no cooldown. It's supremely spammy and broken. It functions like an ability that you'd expect to build up towards, like Phantom Rush. This needs you to max out the combo meter, and then Sonic goes mad with power from all the disrespect he's endured, and it feels good to reach that state. But this doesn't have any sort of checks and balances in place to vary its application. To be fair, it becomes much less viable as early as the second island when enemies get tankier. But then we have the opposite problem where I stopped using it altogether in favor of more powerful abilities. They even give you one later on that's practically the same thing. Cyclone Kick is a lot like Spin Slash, Loop Kick is like the Stomp from a distance, Homing Shot is another ranged attack, Grand Slam and Recovery Smash both involve pressing a prompt at the right time for an automatic spin attack. How does a skill tree this small have so much power creep? What the... I have some questions. Make no mistake, There is a combo game to be had here. When you're wailing on a boss, throwing everything you have at it, chaining 4 or 5 moves back to back, it's pretty fun. The sound design is nice, impacts feel strong. It's a spectacle to see Sonic flying around doing all these crazy stunts. Until that happens. The problem is that every encounter plays out nearly the same. The combos I use on one fight are what I'm using on the next, and so forth, because every move is activated and presented in the same fashion. Press the button, and watch the cutscene that deals damage. None of the bosses put up a resistance worthy of changing that strategy, and if they did, parry their one attack, and they usually die after that. This can actually backfire on some later enemies like the Kunoichi, who teleports around, since after you parry, the game goes all slow-mo to give you the advantage. But if she disappears, you gotta wait even longer for her to come back now that you've slowed down time. In fact, a lot of these bosses use waiting tactics. Asura was a fine start, contesting you with red boosters, although that came with its own issues. This sucks. But then we have Strider and its rail-grinding siesta, Caterpillar doing a similar thing, Spider launching you into the air for an extensive free-falling segment, and Squid. This abominable chrome sack is responsible for plaguing my first session. This was the moment that put into perspective how slow Sonic was. Why does it take so long to go through a basic loop? I get that it's trying to be all cinematic, but I am losing hair waiting for this. And if you don't kill him in one cycle, you gotta do it again. Wow, it's like a surprise party minus the joy. Also, his intro is a jump scare for me. Something about the blank stare and sudden cut with droning music puts me on edge. Oh god, where is he? Where's he gonna come from? Ah! The one saving grace is that you can wait for him to come around, and then if you start comboing him, he'll drop the arena instantly so you won't have to do the chase at all. If you do hit him and fall off though, you may have to commit to that fight anyway, because sometimes the game still thinks you're in combat, so the music never stops. I ran all across the island trying to escape the EDM, but I simply couldn't. No, the worst enemy in the game has to go to Shark. This also has a scary intro, especially at night. I mean, my goodness. What's scarier though is when you realize that the whole fight is a QuickTime event. Now that'll give you nightmares. It's a full 35 seconds of pressing left and right when it tells you, why can't we control this ourselves? It would have been so fun twisting and turning through a sandy battlefield. Even when you can finally land some hits, there's no retaliation. He just lies there like a sponge. So really, this boss isn't a boss at all. There's no fight. Fighting the urge to play something else. A lot of these mechs just sit there while you go to town. Some of them justify it, like Tank, who pulls you into a whirlwind that you carefully homing attack inside. Sumo was one of my favorites because you got to bounce off the walls. Fortress was just a better Squid. Ghost was really unique because it had me going through parts of the open zone to reach different pillars, all while losing rings to put the pressure on. Tower and all its incarnations were my absolute favorite. That is, when they showed up. Ah yes, my greatest enemy. Getting the game to work. It flings projectiles, jumps around, you gotta break its bottom segment so you can reach the top, all while avoiding its spinning wheel. I can go combo mad without all the arbitrary waiting, but still easily take damage if I'm careless. And I am. Master Ninja is probably the coolest enemy in the game, and the only one that feels like an all-out brawl. Parrying is still a problem in the clone phase, however. Holding L and R really should have just been a standard guard to block attacks, and pressing at the moment before you get hit would trigger the parry. That would give you control over the slow motion and still let you defend yourself. Most importantly, it would actually have a skill ceiling instead of being a constant get-out-of-jail-free card. Were you that jealous of Chaos Spear? Oh, guess it doesn't block that one. With versatile defense options, the game would have been far more capable of pitting you against aggressive foes, perhaps multiple at once. Because Sonic's combat appears to be very one-on-one focused, what with all the flashy attacks that lock onto a single target. If it does chuck 3 or 4 at you, it's always small fry of the same type that you attack individually anyway. The polygonal henchmen all die in one hit on Chrono, so combos are out of the question. And from Ares onward, they start putting up shields. Yay! Oh, they could have done anything. Anything but shield enemies. All this does is lock you out of all those fun moves until you've painstakingly side-looped the enemy first. It's not any harder, it's just annoying. And you never know when they're gonna whip these out. Wouldn't it be funny if he stopped having fun? Ranged attacks don't seem to trigger the barriers, but now I'm back to spamming the one move again. There's a quick side loop you can activate mid-combo, but you have to fill the meter first by attacking enemies. The worst is when it side loops a target you weren't aiming at. Yeah, I'd like a refund. Accidental moves seem to be a recurring issue. Every button on the controller has a function, sometimes multiple. This game is stacked with abilities. If you told a Sonic fan the button configuration for Frontiers, they might go into cardiac arrest. So many muscle memory habits will feel betrayed. Boost on R2, light speed dash on left stick, camera reset on right, homing attack is back on X and square. Are the pills taking effect? You can change it to whatever you want, but I couldn't even attempt to rearrange everything. So I left it as is and surprisingly adapted quite fast. I think it works. What I couldn't adapt to were the attacks that used common button combinations to activate. Here, I was simply boosting towards an enemy that I planned on homing attacking, a pretty conventional two-step process. But unfortunately, if you press the homing attack button while you're still boosting, something you've had no issue with on balloons, springs, and most targets for the entire game, it triggers the homing shot, playing out an unnecessary cinematic and leaving me helpless in midair. It's also massive overkill for an enemy that only takes one hit. Poor guy probably died of shock before impact. Immediately after, I boost towards the next enemy and try to jump. But oh, that's right, boost plus jump equals cross slash. Now I'm being rotated off the platform, and if I don't save myself, it's all the way back down. Call my therapist, because she's about to make a lot of money. One time, it sent me back in space. Look how close I am to the enemy, and how far back it trebuchets me for the attack. And since I've already boosted, now I get to fall down and watch Cocaine Collision Zone play out. It beats having everything on one button, but this seems a tad cramped. It's probably why there's no light and heavy attack. They simply didn't have the room for it, and I think it suffers from that. The combat overall is too limited to allow for any depth beyond its one-trick nature of cycling through your favorite cutscene combos and parrying one strike. It's a solid first draft that has its moments in the spotlight, but there's so much room for improvement, and you don't have to look far for inspiration. In general, balance is not Frontier's strongest attribute. It gives you a lot of freedom with how you approach progression to the point where nothing holds that great of value. You need vault keys to clear the island, but instead of getting them from cyberspace, you can fish, which means that you no longer have a need to kill bosses for portal gears. So now leveling up your skill tree is less important since you're not fighting, eliminating the need to kill common enemies for XP, or completing optional missions for attack and defense upgrades. Suddenly, everything becomes undermined. Yeah, no thanks. This goes beyond fishing, though. One of the skills you unlock very early is the ability to perform tricks after hitting a shiny ramp, spring, or running off a flat surface to earn skill points. Sounds handy, and it is. In fact, it's so handy that you can spam tricks off the same spring over and over to max out the skill tree in exactly 55 minutes. Yes, I did the math. Now, are people gonna do this? Probably not, especially when the strongest abilities are passively handed out during the story, but you could at least try to mask such an easy-to-see exploit, or crazy idea. Don't include it. Make it so that the spring loses its shine after one use. Now you gotta go find another, explore the island further. Why does this keep happening? It can be fun to have such a game-breaking mechanic. After all, it lets me fight Giganto with all my moves, but like any cheat code, once the high wears off, you realize how much substance it robs the experience of, or how dull the normal one is. Then there's the topic of difficulty. And normally I wouldn't care because Sonic games have never been about that for me. They're spectacle platformers that specialize in sensational movement and might get a little tricky by the end. But as a grown man, I'm not struggling when I play these. And that's okay. I truthfully don't care how easy or hard something is as long as it's engaging. Unfortunately, Frontier's combat doesn't quite know what it wants to be yet. It's trying to combine Sonic elements into a hack and slash, but some of those traits don't favorably overlap. Rings, for example, work pretty well in a forward-moving platformer that encourages reckless experimentation so you can learn how to ebb and flow with grace. But for a completely different genre that's about direct enemy confrontation, taking that threat seriously is important for player-side decision-making. So when you have a system where you cannot die so long as you have a single ring, and getting hit causes those rings to fly out nearby where you can easily grab them again, you are effectively invulnerable, taking the threat out of every situation. Also, you can generate rings at will by side-looping the ground. You might even get progression items. So not only are you never without assistance, but rings found throughout the open zone are consequently rendered next to meaningless. Why grab any here if I can do this at any time? This lack of danger is only made more mystifying by the weirdly unforgiving invincibility frames. No. This had to be an accident. It doesn't make the combat more casual friendly like everything else would lead you to believe, nor does it add any kind of skill ceiling since getting double hit is completely out of your control. Yet at the same time, you only take damage when you hit the ground. That's when your rings fly out. So if you can dodge roll after getting hit, Sonic will return to his normal stance and you won't lose anything. Man, only in Frontiers can you avoid an attack after it happens. Of course, you'd probably be more interested in the recovery smash by that point. After getting hit, you press jump when the prompt appears, and you'll buzzsaw the enemy right back, which you can manipulate by taking damage on purpose. It's kind of busted. So yeah, balance isn't exactly what they achieved. To make the combat a smashing success, fix the parry, include better enemy telegraphs, more enemy types, better health system, combos that aren't self-contained animations, and an actual hard mode, or a score/ranking system that rewards high-level play. Currently, the only way to speed up the fights is by increasing your stats. Seeds of power and defense that you bring to Hermit Coco for an instant upgrade. And tiny lost Cocos to the Elder who can only upgrade one stat at a time. I truly can't believe that made it into a final build. He levels up your ring capacity and max speed. This is incredibly misleading, however, as your running speed is unaffected. What this refers to is your climbing speed. Yes, of course, how could I be so blind? Alright, because it doesn't tell you. The crazy thing about it all, though, is that you have so much freedom in how you clear an island without being pushed too far in any given direction, that you're able to choose when and what content you want to participate in. If I see an enemy or guardian that I have no interest in fighting because I filed a restraining order, I can ignore it. Same goes for missions, cyberspace, fishing, even parts of the open zone. If there's a portion of this game that I don't like, chances are there's a way around it. And so by some miracle, Frontiers is allowed to have its cake and eat it too, by letting you skip the filler of your choice, or at least reducing it to a palatable size. Your runtime will suffer, but this thing took me 23 hours to 100%. Even if you cut that in half, you're still left with a good 10 to 12 hours, one of the biggest Sonic games we've ever had. There is, however, one area where I felt the combat was most effective. The Titan fights. I don't think it's been properly quantified how much heavy lifting these battles and their music have done for Frontier's legacy and reception. People are quoting lyrics in comment threads on Steam reviews. Frontier's status is a video format now. Boys are becoming men overnight. They single-handedly raised the entire game one letter grade. It's insane. When I went super to fight Giganto for the first time, and I heard those heavenly vocals staggered against a monstrous riff, my jaw dropped. They did it. They made Sonic cool again, and in a way that's never been explored. Metalcore? In Sonic? The Freak on a Leash Go is in here? Where am I? I could not stop grinning for several minutes. This feeling I had was what I wanted to feel for this series for so long. That moment I could point to and say, yeah, this is awesome. Frontiers gives me that in spades, and it's all thanks to these Titan fights. What great timing, too, with how much Metal Gear Rising became a meme again. The showmanship is sky high, reveling in excess at every opportunity. The flashing on impact, chromatic aberration on damage text, giant Might Guy fists, perfect syncing of actions with music. It's like a playable AMV. Stopping a beam with your bare hands, giving him the Piccolo treatment, flying through the sky, passing over the open zone beneath, jumbling missiles into a ball, prying open the beast's mouth, riding a spiked shield like a flying saucer. I'm gonna cry. There is no questioning that these are franchise highlights for me, some of the most memorable scenes in all of Sonic. It's no wonder why it's being compared to Revengeance, yet ironically, the music is even heavier. It's like Doom with vocals. Guilty Gear? Nah, bury the light, you better bury the trophy, because Sonic's about to steal it. The music really does carry the fights. You don't even have to like the genre to appreciate the raw imagery of pairing Sonic the Hedgehog with one of the most hardcore forms of music. It was like Christmas morning every time these fights came up. You wanted to hear what crazy new song they were going to incinerate you with next. Not to say the combat doesn't hold its own here, but it certainly takes a back seat to what you're observing. One of my favorite things about the three main Titans is how they first interact with you on the island as regular Sonic, showing how powerless you are in your base form. Giganto straight up chucks you across the map like, yeah, try getting a 7 out of 10 now. Small thing, but I love how the camera cuts diagonally on every hit. It's these details that we've been sorely missing. Wyvern chases you through a desert obstacle course that would have been really fun if it didn't needlessly restrict your movement. It's a great set piece, but the threat is almost entirely visual. Knight has a similar problem with not enough stuff to dodge, but it's also in 2D, so you get that noticeable downgrade in speed, sucking out all the excitement. The spike shield wasn't used enough either. It felt more like a Squid 2.0 fight than a Titan, and that is not good for my blood pressure. When it's finally time to throw down, though, Sonic needs to climb up the Titan's body to reach the last Chaos Emerald, Shadow of the Colossus style. I really like that these were included, so much so that I wish there was more to them. Some more platforming, obstacles, anything to drag it out just a bit longer. Wyvern's is unique in that you have to climb up a tower so you can even reach him, but it's also not because it's another Squid segment. Wow, I'm getting tired of these. It's a better one, fortunately, but still too drawn out and desperate need of variety. We also should have climbed on the Wyvern at some point instead of only at the very end. Knight's is more on the conventional side in that you wait for an opening to make your move. Well, when he's not migrating like a runaway swivel chair with one of the worst camera angles. Once you're on him, though, there's no resistance. Just climb up and you're good. Kinda tame compared to the first two. But what about the fights themselves? How do they fare? Well, like I said, the spectacle carries it. Supersonic has all the same moves with visual enhancements to his Grand Slam and giant fists during punches. And unlike the smaller Guardian fights, Titans will attack you more often, so it's not just a combo spam fest. Although that is still a big part of it. Holy! Giganto's camera is something to behold. The hit detection on his arm is a specter. What is that, like 2 frames? And when he knocks you away, Sonic faces you for 3 seconds before the perspective slowly shifts back to normal. But you can move during this time, so you try getting back into the fight only to be slapped right back away like a cat for jumping on the counter. This camera sucks! Instead of being pushed all the way back, just give us a nudge that takes away rings. Lord knows we're not going to run out otherwise. The whole thing needed more fine-tuning. There will be times where things just happen. Like that. What the heck was that? Inputs will fail, you'll try a combo and it simply won't activate due to some undisclosed buffer time that all your attacks have. There's a second phase where he emits scapular beams, but nothing changes, just a new QuickTime event thrown in. But man, if I didn't feel like a Titan myself wailing on this behemoth while the background chants, I am undefeatable. It's a cathartic first fight that in any other game could be the final boss, setting a new standard for the series in terms of presentation. Just needs a bit cleaned up. Did he just turn my parry around? What the? Wyvern is better and worse for different reasons. The parry game is a lot stronger, you can't even attack him until you've deflected a missile and the following slashes. But this also means that there's a healthy amount of waiting, especially if you mess it up and have to restart the cycle. The missiles can also be hard to see amongst all the chaos, so you're better off holding the parry down the whole time and waiting because you can. Would have been a lot more exciting if the parry was timing based and the missile that you had to hit came into frame with a bolder outline or glow for better visibility. If you messed it up, you would simply lose rings instead of being knocked back so you could quickly recover and parry the next missile to keep things moving. At least the camera reset is much faster here. When it is damage dealing time, it operates like Shark, where you do as much as you can in the allotted time while it lies there defenseless. It's alright. After that, he opens up a Dunkin' Donuts, and then the final phase starts with a QuickTime event that I was so caught off guard by that I failed 4 consecutive button presses. Oh my, wait, he's actually dead. Look at that, he's gone. No model or ashes, just instantly eviscerated. Oh my gosh, I'm back on the ground. Wow, that's pretty hardcore. Doesn't match the difficulty they're shooting for at all, but hey, I dig it. Would have felt a lot more deserving if I died to real gameplay instead of being overcome by so much shock and awe that a Big the Cat fishing minigame was a supersonic boss tutorial, but I'm at least glad that the QTEs in this game are completely insane. I'd prefer not having any if possible, but if you're gonna include them, this is how you do it. It's almost embarrassing when you compare these to the ones in Forces. Even Unleashed didn't go this hard. Knight may very well be my favorite of the 3, but it's also the jankiest. He spins around like a wizard. You can try and hit him or just wait. It's kind of a weird opening phase. Then you gotta beat up his shield, so he throws it and you ride it back through the opposing missiles. They really like using these. Again, the random spam pushing you around can feel jank, but there's something sensational about cutting through all that madness. And I mean, just look at this. Look at this! The very end is where we see the best phase from any of the Titans. The shield starts bouncing around with... what's this? A clear telegraph that has me parrying the attack back at the enemy, and I actually have to aim where he's going because I'll miss? Holy smokes, I'm playing a video game. This is what all the fights needed so much more of. It's not even hard, it's just interesting. And you still get to watch Sonic wield a giant sword that we totally should have been able to control, but man, what a great send-off. Too bad the fourth Titan sucks. I don't know what happened here, man. The ending falls apart so quickly, just caves in on itself right at the finish line. First of all, no island interaction as regular Sonic, nor do we have to climb up for the final emerald. You just go super in a cutscene and fly over to him, already weakening its impact. But then, Supreme, the whole brand, is just Giganto again, but worse. He's got these pointless triangles around him that you don't even have to fight. Less HP, and you're a higher level now, so you will shred his health bar. The poor guy doesn't stand a chance. He's got the same arm swing attack and camera issue. Also, what's with the wings? They look awesome. Are we gonna fight high up in the sky with those? No, seems we are 4 feet off the ground, wings are gone, and the fight is exactly the same. Okay, where's my ammunition? Then we have these pointless cutscenes where I parry an attack and then it shows Sonic getting blasted away. Why? Why do I have to watch this? Twice. The big QTE of the fight isn't even exciting. He whips out a gun, okay, off to a good start, but then Sonic deflects the blast in like 2 frames behind the circle where you can't see it. And the ending doesn't do anything extraordinary either. You just watch him move his neck for 30 seconds. What is happening?
Is that it?
Yeah, my thoughts exactly. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but there is a true final boss that will only show up on hard mode. Now, that's not the problem. This could have been a redeeming moment to go out with a bang. But what we're given is a sudden return to the bullet hell minigame against a foe that just revealed itself. Credits. Okay, here's the deal. This fight is better than Supreme. It functions, you can see everything on screen, it's fair, and might just be the most difficult final boss in a Sonic game. Not a high bar, but the fact that you can only get hit twice is rigid. And I appreciate that it's...
All right. We done with that. That was a really interesting game. Yeah, that was really interesting. And dude was even more funnier than the first video that I did a reaction to on this channel. He need to start making more because he was hilarious, bro. But with that being said, man, we're gonna start trying to get more and more reaction videos going. You know, we just starting. We ain't even tickle a belly button yet. So we just starting out. You feel me? Uh it's gonna be all types of reaction going down on this platform. Uh so y'all just buckle up, get your drinks, get something to eat, whatever you eat, you know, and chillax. We're gonna do long form videos on here just to see if you know the algorithm stay positive. You feel me? So if my algorithm stay positive, then we good. But with that being said, I'm about to head on out of here. You know, I got sleeping to do. It's nighttime. You feel me? But remember, money does not sleep, y'all. So with that being said, uh, stay positive, stay energetic, and stay grinding, y'all. That's all I gotta say. Uh, and y'all know what to do. You know, I ain't gotta keep telling y'all what to do. You know, this has been the reacting rhythm. You feel me? The reacting rhythm. This has been that reacting rhythm. You feel me? I'm just still getting used to the name. You feel me? But yeah, man. Subscribe to the channel. You know, press that like button and press the thumbs down if you have to. If you don't like it, you feel me? But we're gonna keep throwing them out to y'all. So the reacting rhythm is out. Peace.